Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Gridiron Review as we wrap up the high school season. Talk about the colleges, both that we talk about have games remaining, bowl games for both Maryland and the Naval Academy, and of course the pros where the Ravens could be headed to the playoffs. The Redskins are headed toward another offseason of figuring out what the heck is going wrong. But Pete Medhurst along with Bill Wagner. Bill, you had a chance to get out to the M&T Bank Stadium where Northwest and Old Mill played the best by far of any of the championship games. The other three games were really duds. This one, a 34-31 thriller. Two of the best running backs in the state on display with E.J. Lee and Donovan Franklin for Old Mill. And a game that, if you paid your money to get in, by far gave you the best entertainment value of the three-day weekend of high school football.
Well, it was a great game. Two very talented, well-coached teams went at it. High-scoring affair. Two very sound offenses. Really came down to the wire. Old Mill had its opportunities. They just could not get a defensive stop down the stretch when they needed one to give them the opportunity to get ahead. But it was a really good game. It was exciting to watch. And as you mentioned, you really got your money's worth if you were there. Both running backs were outstanding. Old Mill had a wide variety of players. I tell you what, Dave Morocco really stepped up. They were keying on Donovan Franklin. He rushed for 100 yards, but it wasn't his greatest day. He didn't have any breakaway runs. But the quarterback stepped up and made some plays. They had plays in the passing game that were critical to touchdown drives. Just a well-played game. A shame that Old Mill could not come away with their third state championship since 2009. But they played a heck of a game and represented Anne Arundel County very well.
Well, as we talked about the points shaping up all season long, we said the winner, if somebody from Anne Arundel County was going to win it, or that region in particular, they were going to have to beat Northwest. Northwest was by far top to bottom the team in the 4A that you were going to have to beat. E.J. Lee, a fantastic running back, 197 yards, 59-yard touchdown run, 35-yard touchdown run. So it's not as if Old Mill walks away going, man, we played, this team that was chopped liver and didn't get the job done. They went toe-to-toe with the best team in the state. You walk away from this game with your head held high. You played the best that the state had to offer.
Right, Northwest was a defending state champion. This team's legit. Their linebackers were outstanding. They had three big, strong, fast, athletic linebackers. Made it very difficult for Old Mill to run the ball. I mean, that's Old Mill's game. They're going to play smash mouth, and they weren't quite even though, as I mentioned, Donovan Franklin did get 100 yards, they didn't control play with their ground game. It just wasn't going to happen. That's why they had to go to the air to make some plays, and to their credit, they did. But it was a very impressive overall effort by both teams. Northwest knew they got a game from a legitimate opponent. Northwest had to do everything in its power to win that game, and I know they felt relieved to walk off that field with the state championship trophy.
And, of course, some structure when you play at the state championship game at M&T Bank Stadium. Coming up here, we've got comments from Chad McCormick from the press conference. And then afterward, Bill had a chance to spend some extra time with Chad McCormick and Old Mill's Noah Fitzgerald.
Statistically, Venables got involved today big time compared to the entire season. Was that a plan to try to get a few other guys involved since you knew they were?
It was just sort of a field type of thing. He had a great football game. I wouldn't say it was anything necessary game plan. James is a great football player for us. And he's definitely explosive and capable of making very big plays. And his number got dialed up a few more times tonight.
And Coach, what you just said about the way that David played, a lot of big throws, convert a lot of third downs.
Yeah, absolutely. David, I think, is one of the top, if not the top quarterback in Anne Arundel County. Just our system-wise, we don't throw a lot, but we have the capability to do so. He did a great job picking up third down, staying very composed. Credit to our offensive line as well. Kept, for the most part, a very clean pocket and made things possible for him to do work, and our receivers did a great job making plays.
Coach, were you surprised that Wilkerson ran some unbelievable routes out there? Were you surprised that they didn't shade a free safety over to his side every time?
No, they started to shade a little bit, but we were fortunate. I thought just to have some good calls, and then he's a very elusive player, like a lot of our receivers are out there, and he's able to make great plays, make great cuts. And some of the stuff we did is sort of a dual read that the kids are able to do, and they do a great job. Our quarterback coach and wide receiver coach have them ready, and they made some nice plays.
And Coach, we just say about this run you guys had to get here after losing those first two, and then pretty much being forced to win.
It's an incredible run. We were an underdog since the very beginning. We don't personally feel that way as a program, but from media standpoints and outside eyes looking in, we were an underdog this whole time. We felt like we were entitled to be here. And did a great job. But, it shows a lot of credit to our players for the adversity that they were able to come through. Because I really do think, I've said this before, that a lot of players would have packed it in after those first 2 weeks. And we couldn't afford another loss at that time. And you know what, for us to get here, there's 47 other teams that don't play this game. So, you know, it's going to be tough for our guys tonight. You know, it's going to be tough for us coaches for a little while too, and, you know, our players. But you know what, at the end of the day, they're going to be really proud of themselves and what they did and for this opportunity.
Did Northwest do anything differently from what you guys had seen on tape or in the scouting film?
No, I don't think there was anything that they did in particular. We were pretty much ready for what they were going to do. You know, it's just a matter of, you know, certain times we made football plays where they didn't, and other times they came up and made a big play, put us in a situation. But I think the flow of the game went really well overall, and we were able to move the football. And they made plays, we made plays. We just ended up on the wrong end of it.
What, in your opinion, makes their back EJ Lisa?
He's a hard runner, you know what I mean? A lot of times I think we had him bottled up. I don't know what he ended up with. He was probably like what we do with Donovan, ran the ball a heck of a lot of times, and ended up with pretty good statistics. They had a few, you know, broken tackles where we just didn't get him wrapped up. He's a strong physical kid, you know. He's a good running back, around like running backs we've seen a lot of times. But they kept feeding him. You give good football players the ball a lot, and they probably make plays for you.
Is he faster than any back you faced this year?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's faster. He just ended up getting in the open field. You know, he missed a tackle here or there and got in the open field. I don't know if he's the fastest guy we've seen. You know, as a whole, Northwest was probably the most balanced offense that we've seen the entire year, which you do that, things are spread out a little bit more, and a good back's going to have some room to operate.
Well, we're here following the Class 4A state championship game. It was one heck of a game between Northwest and Old Mill, a real shootout. Old Mill falls 34-31, comes up just short in securing its third state championship since 2009. Head coach Chad McCormick, just talk about the season. I mean, right now it's painful to lose, but this was a great season, and when you look back upon it, I think you'll be pretty proud of this group.
Yeah, biggest thing is I'm extremely proud of our kids. I'm extremely proud of our coaches about what we accomplished. This one's going to take a little time to swallow, you know what I mean, because we didn't come here for second place. We came here to win the championship, so that's tough. But as a whole of a season, you know what I mean, it's an unbelievable ride that we were on, you know. I mean, what was it? We won 11 straight football games after being down 2 games at the beginning of the season. It's a credit to our players and coaching staff for sticking things together. And, you know, to make it to this game, it's an incredible thing.
And I thought a lot of your guys stepped up. You know, your quarterback, David Morocco, who, you know, been called a game manager, but today he really performed, threw for over 200 yards, a couple touchdowns. I mean, against a team that was really strong against the run and was stacking the line of scrimmage, you had to throw the ball, and David did a good job.
Yeah, David did an incredible job. You know, that Northwest secondary is one of the fastest out there, probably one of the better ones in the state. I had an opportunity way back a long time ago, 7-on-7 against him, and we didn't do very well. We didn't do very well in our scrimmage, so we went out there and weren't quite sure what we'd be able to do passing-wise against him. And we were overall pretty balanced tonight. We were able to run the ball overall pretty effectively. And then the passing game, David and our receivers came up huge. The O-line did a great job protecting and giving them time to make plays.
Now, obviously, Northwest is the defending state champ. There's a very, very good team. Went undefeated all year. Lost one game, rather, but avenged that loss during the playoffs. What was it about Northwest ultimately, that you think was made them the slightly better team tonight?
I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily call them the overall better team. You know what I mean? They just ended up having the ball last and ran it out, and you know we were a possession of difference. So if anything, it was one possession here. Maybe we didn't have to punt one time, you know what I mean? And maybe we're on the other side of that score. But just after that the first score we had, we were never ever able to get back on the plus side of the scoreboard.
Right. Noah Fitzgerald, an outstanding season for you, an outstanding career. Just talk about being in the state championship game. It's an amazing experience to get back here. Not many teams get to do this. You've played in this twice. Just tell me about the experience overall.
Hey, man, that's a great experience. I love the time that I spent here at Old Mill. Definitely will. It's been a season to remember, but, hey, man, we came up short, and that's the only thing that's on my mind right now.
Obviously, they had a very outstanding tailback. E.J. Lee ran for almost 200 yards. Just what could you say about him, and why was he tough to stop tonight?
Hey, man, the kid's a hard runner. He doesn't go down off just one guy. You're going to need 2 or 3 to get at him. He broke a couple tackles, made a few plays, and got out in open space. We couldn't let the big play kill us, and the big play killed us tonight.
And as Coach said, you guys were right there on the doorstep twice in the fourth quarter. You got within 3. You needed to stop. You just weren't quite able to get it. They were able to, grind some yardage, get down the field. Just tell me how tough that was when you needed to stop and you weren't quite able to do it when you guys have been so good defensively all season.
It's tough, man. It's tough to swallow. We pride ourselves on how good our defense has been all year, and we just came up short.
Well, it's been an outstanding for Old Mill season for Old Mill football. Coach McCormick, Noah, congratulations. You represented Anne Arundel County very well.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Josh.
Bill, you can't help but come away impressed by Old Mill. Chad McCormick has done a marvelous job filling big shoes as the head coach. As we've talked about throughout the year, Noah Fitzgerald, a guy getting it done not only on the field but in the classroom. He's going to be playing at Fordham next year. So a great opportunity to represent Old Mill, and one of Old Mill's own takes home one of the big pieces of hardware from the Annapolis Touchdown Club, and obviously will be rewarded with it coming up the banquet later on in 2015.
That's right. The Sunday after the state championship game, the coaches all got together, both public and private, for the Touchdown Club's annual brunch to select the Rhodes Trophy and Al Larimore Awards. Rhodes Trophy was a very tight voting affair between Kanan Gabley, the Broadneck quarterback. He was selected as the Capital Gazette newspaper's player of the year. But I think what Donovan Franklin did in the postseason, and one coach even mentioned that he carried you all to the state championship, and it's hard to argue with that. Donovan Franklin rushed for almost 700 yards in the postseason alone, and I think what he did in the playoffs is what really carried the day in terms of him winning that award by just a smidgen over Kanan Gabley, who had an outstanding season. And then Aaron Jackson is a Arundel offensive tackle. He won the Al Larimore Award. There wasn't a whole lot of candidates this year, Pete. It wasn't a great year for linemen in the county. There were not a lot of big-time Division I linemen, but Aaron Jackson is well-deserving, a hard-working kid, has had a great career at Arundel, so he'll get the Larimore Award, which goes to the most outstanding lineman. You got to be a lineman, guy in the trenches with your hand down. That's what that award is for, so Aaron Jackson from Arundel will get that. But always good to see the coaches get together, both public and private, and come up with the award winners for the Touchdown Club. And,
of course, Aaron leading the way for Larry Barnes had an awesome year running the football for Arundel.
He's the left tackle, so he protects the backside of Anthony Messenger in an offense in which they throw the ball a ton. So there's no question he's a good offensive lineman and very deserving of the award. The coaches voted for it, and that's all there is to it.
And, of course, as we often talk about through the years, we've talked about some of those who have come and unfortunately have left us, as former county coach John Zuger passed away as well here recently.
He was kind of a really interesting figure. He coached at Northeast. He's an assistant elsewhere, but he really made his mark as a scout. He was a scout with the Canadian Football League for 25 years. And what was really neat about John Zuger is that he loved scouting so much that he would go to high school football games and sit in the stands just to scout. And Chuck Markowitz would get a phone call on a Monday and say, I scouted your team. Do you want to know my thoughts? And Chuck Markowitz, yeah, sure. Because, I mean, it's always good to get another eye from someone else. And he would give them a breakdown on here's your weaknesses, here's your strengths, here's what you need to improve. He did that with a lot of county coaches. J.P. Hines was mentioning that when he was the head coach at Severna Park, Zuger used to call him all the time, too. So he was a colorful figure, an interesting figure, very knowledgeable football guy, and we should definitely recognize John Zuger passing away. He was a good man.
Love Canadian football. My team, the Edmonton Eskimos, losing in the Western Conference semifinals.
You were broken up.
To eventual champion Calgary, who was led by a quarterback that Bill and I used to watch at SMU, Bo Levi Mitchell, who eventually left SMU to go to Eastern Washington and led them to a 1AA championship. When we come back, we'll stay with the colleges. Navy and Maryland are headed to bowls, and of course, Bill and I this past Saturday were at the Army-Navy Classic, the 115th edition, and more people watched it this year than they have over the past 10 years. We'll give you the numbers when we come back on the Gridiron Review. And welcome back. Army-Navy, the 115th edition. And Bill, it was competitive to a point. The score, of course, ends up a one-touchdown game. But Navy's defense, with one of its best efforts of the season, they were not pierced for points on the defensive side until very late in the game when Army hit a 52-yard field goal. Army's only touchdown of the day came on a blocked punt on special teams. And ironically, coming in, you expect Navy's offense to be the difference, but it was their defense that carried them to the 17-10 victory on Saturday over Army and winning that game for the 13th straight time.
Well, for incredible accomplishment to continue this absolutely unbelievable streak against Army. And a series of this nature between two schools that really are so similar, and their football programs are so similar. For one side to have won 13 in a row is just phenomenal. Ken Niumatalolo, our guy, head coach, 7th year, is now the all-time winningest coach in Navy football history. That's a tremendous accomplishment. Congratulations to Coach Ken, well-deserved. 56 wins, is that what it is?
Correct.
Surpasses the great George Welsh in that category. But you're right, Pete. The Navy defense was just outstanding. Jordan Drake, the inside linebacker, a heck of an effort. 11 tackles, a big sack that took the Army out of scoring range. They talk about the two defensive ends, Paul Quisenberry and Will Anthony. I thought both had outstanding games. And when you're stopping Army from running the ball, Army's a very effective running team. Bernie Sara, the nose guard, is doing some good things. But just an outstanding effort by the Navy defense. The offense had some trouble getting in gear. 4 straight punts to start the game. 3 of those series, they did not even get a first down. So a real struggle to get things going. I think, in my opinion, putting fullback Chris Swain in kind of turned the tide. He was able to create some yardage on his own by running over people. Yeah. Had some pretty nice inside runs. And then, of course, the big pass to Jameer Tillman, a 39-yard bomb from Keenan Reynolds to Jameer Tillman that led to Navy's first touchdown, kind of loosened things up a little bit. And that's kind of what Navy had to do. They had to loosen Army up from there, putting 11 men up in the box.
Yeah, I mean, Jameer Tillman, people don't realize he was a 3-star recruit coming out of Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas, and he is by far, you could argue, the most talented playmaker outside of Keenan Reynolds on this offense right now. And those two together again for another year next year, I would expect Ivan Jasper to find even more ways for those two to hook up via the air with his playmaking ability, because when they needed that big play, it was a passing play that got Navy going and not necessarily a running play. Right. Running, of course, sustained them in the second half. But the thing about it was, too, fast game. I mean, just 3 possessions in the third quarter alone. And when you're winning the game, as Navy got ahead eventually, Austin Grebe with a great kick at the end of the half.
We need to give Grebe some props.
He's been fantastic.
He has been terrific since taking over as the place kicker.
Making big field goals at the end of halves. And then this week in the third quarter on that opening drive, making sure Navy got points with another long field goal for the midshipmen. So when you look at it from that standpoint, Navy started to do those little things, those intangible things in the second half that eventually allowed them to get a victory. Now on to San Diego for the bowl game. San Diego State will be the opponent in the San Diego County Credit Union Poinsettia Bowl. The interesting thing about this for the Mids is this is little or no preparation. Outside of the coaches watching a lot of tape this week, many of them are out recruiting too.
They all are,
while they're trying to get this game together and a game plan together for San Diego State a week from Tuesday in San Diego, California. So the Mids are obviously going to have to travel on Friday. They're going to get together for a couple of walkthroughs because they've got final exams going on this week in Annapolis. So their preparation for the bowl game may be a little slim to none, more than a walkthrough and watching some film. It's a great test for the coaches to try and get a game plan together, but still in all, Bill, it's a reward for the seniors for that one extra game so they can maximize their season and play at least one more football game in a Navy uniform. And what better place to do it in San Diego?
Right. I think when you talk about a bowl game, in a way, it's kind of like a stamp of approval that you had a good season. You're going to go into the postseason. You get to play another game on national television. Usually, there's only 2 bowl games on the day that Navy's playing, which is Tuesday, December 23rd. So you get a little national spotlight. It's nice to win, of course, but the real overall is that it tells people you had a successful season. You qualified for a bowl. As you mentioned, they're going to have the head coach Ken Niumatalolo is on the road all week, along with most of the assistants. Ivan Jasper, the offensive coordinator, and Buddy Green, the defensive coordinator, are going to run some practices this week, but it'll be skeleton crew. They're really going to have to get all their work done when they arrive in San Diego. Probably 3 days of, as you mentioned, relatively light drills. But it is a great accomplishment. The kids are going to get some nice sweatpants, some other swag that the bowl gives them.
$329 Best Buy gift card.
Yep, they get some
Search the internet. Search Google bowl game gifts.
Yeah.
And see what some of these bowl games give the players.
Right.
It is amazing.
It's nice, right? And that's part of it. That's part of the whole reward. They get out there, they get treated well. You're going to have a luncheon on the USS Midway. You have other bowl events. They're going to get to go to San Diego Zoo and to SeaWorld. That's what this is all about. Before we stop talking about Army Navy, we should mention one other guy we need to give a shout out to, Thomas Wilson.
Yeah.
Got the onside kick at the end of the game.
Heck of a play.
Army was within a touchdown, and they go for an onside kick with, 1:15 left, Pete?
Yep.
And Thomas Wilson, a backup wide receiver, went high and snared that ball.
And he got hit. He was getting hit low while he was up in the air, and as he makes the catch, he gets crushed over the top. But he managed to hang on to the football because Army got that bounce they were looking for.
That was a perfect onside kick. Yeah, it came high, and it could have been a real problematic situation. Thomas Wilson does deserve credit, one of the heroes of the game.
Yeah, making a big play there. Meanwhile, Maryland's going to head out to San Francisco and play there against Stanford. Now, in terms of matchups for Maryland, this has been the type of team that's given them huge problems throughout the season. A big physical team, Bill, a la Wisconsin, Ohio State. Those are the teams that just kind of punch Maryland right in the mouth.
Right.
But Maryland's had basically a month to prepare for it here, and those, to me, that's always the wild card in these bowl games for most teams who haven't played since the end of November. Now, all of a sudden, a month later, they're basically playing a glorified exhibition game. So really anything can happen for the Terps as they head out to play out in San Francisco against Stanford, who's really about a half hour from their backyard.
Right, well, and Stanford's good. They didn't have the type of season that they are accustomed to having, but they closed it off by beating the heck out of UCLA.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an ugly beatdown, and as you mentioned, they play smash-mouth football, which could be problematic for the Terps. But for Maryland, after the very disappointing regular season-ending loss to Rutgers, it'd be nice to win a bowl game, kind of put a nice exclamation point to this season. It'd be great for moving ahead with recruiting. They are doing well recruiting in the state. One of the things that happened since our last show, Adam McLean, who's rated the #1 prospect in all of Maryland of any position, defensive tackle from Quince Orchard, has committed to Maryland. He originally was committed to Penn State. He reneged and is now committed to Maryland. That's a huge get for the Terps.
Almost makes you wonder how much Maryland winning that game at Penn State and Penn State's subpar first year under James Franklin, where even a guy like Christian Hackenberg, the quarterback who'd been good under Bill O'Brien, really regressed this year for Penn State. You wonder how much that may have played a part in McLean changing his commitment.
I think played a huge part. I think Maryland, that's a major statement. People kind of get this attitude that Penn State's better than Maryland. Well, on the field, they proved that they weren't. So definitely huge. And we should also mention Brad Craddock, the outstanding kicker. I didn't think he was going to get it. And the Aguayo from Florida State, and it was interesting when they had the awards show and they were about to announce the winner, Aguayo put his head down like, he thought he knew he won it. It was somewhat of a surprise that Craddock won it over Aguayo, but a great accomplishment to be the Lou Groza Award winner, nation's best kicker.
Yeah, only missed one field goal all season long, and that was kind of in the chaos of the late game Rutgers situation that melted down on the Terps after they had a huge lead there at halftime of that game. When we come back, speaking of chaos, well, that's the Redskins. Of course, Don Adams, you'll remember him from Get Smart. Chaos was the organization that always tried to undermine everything. Well, the Redskins have been very good at undermining themselves. Meanwhile, the Ravens, they weren't perfect, but they won. We'll talk about those two games when we come back here on the Gridiron Review. Welcome back. We'll start with the winners. The Baltimore Ravens, not perfect against Jacksonville. Give Gus Bradley's crew credit. Another competitive game for the Jaguars. Just not enough material to get over the top. But, Bill, in recent weeks, the Ravens may have lost this game, but right now, starting to mold things with that patchwork secondary, they still seem to be doing enough to stay right now in a wild card spot in the AFC. Interesting race in the AFC North. The Bengals by half a game because of the tie over the Steelers and the Ravens. Right now it's the Ravens in the driver's seat for that wild card spot. Schedule favors Baltimore. Right. Houston will be on their fourth quarterback when they come to face, because Fitzpatrick got hurt and Tom Savage got hurt on the last play of the game. So they're going to see the former Duke quarterback Thad Lewis, who we saw multiple times for Duke against the Naval Academy. So you really wonder how effective is Houston's offense going to be. They'll give them credit. They only lost Indianapolis 17-10 on Sunday.
They closed with Cleveland and Johnny Manziel, who put up a giant goose egg in his starting debut.
10 of 18, 80 yards in a game that you lost 30-0.
Right.
So if you only throw 18 times in that game, that means they don't have a lot of confidence in it.
And meanwhile, division-leading Cincinnati has to travel to Denver. You figure that they'll be an underdog there. And then Pittsburgh and Cincinnati play each other again.
Last game.
Somebody's taking a loss there. So as you mentioned, the schedule does favor the Ravens.
No question about that. As Joe Flacco and company getting the job done yesterday, the defense was fantastic. Terrell Suggs and company getting pressure on Blake Bortles and really making life miserable for him. Meanwhile, Robert Griffin III looked like he had made one of those heroic plays. And if you've ever seen football games turn on one play, that's what happened to the Redskins. They were on the verge of going up 17-7 at halftime against the Giants in New York. Replay reverses the touchdown. Santana Moss goes off, gets thrown out of the game. All of a sudden, the Redskins in the second half can only come up with 3 points. They lose to Odell Beckham Jr. and the Giants by a count of 24-13. But that one reversal on replay changed the entire complexion of the football game, and it was the right call from the officials.
Right, but in a way, there was one good thing that came out of that is that the Redskins galvanized. Here's Robert Griffin III has been the controversial figure. He sold out on that play, diving for the goal line, and his players, his teammates stood up for him. So there might be some sort of positive coming out of there. I mean, there's been just a ridiculous deal going on. Talk radio, I don't know what to believe anymore. I mean, they say Bruce Allen is a Colt McCoy guy. Daniel Schneider wants Robert Griffin III to be the starter. Now they're saying that Jay Gruden actually likes Kirk Cousins more. I don't know where the evidence of that comes from.
Because he put up massive numbers in those back-to-back games against Jacksonville and Philadelphia. The issue came when he had fourth-quarter turnovers in the game after that, and then obviously Jay Gruden lost a little confidence in him at that point. But in terms of sheer physical talent to run that offense of the three guys, Cousins may be the best of the three to do it. He has to get over that mental hurdle that was turning the ball over late
and had that deer in the head. So what happens now, Pete? Do they bring all three of these quarterbacks back next year and have an open competition?
Not a chance.
What do you do?
I think Griffin is on the market.
Really?
He's got the most value, I think, still on the market.
Okay.
Unless somebody calls you up and says, hey, we'll take Cousins and we'll give you a fourth or fifth. Griffin's only really a fifth on the market, talking to some player personnel people around the league right now. So, again, they've really run the value of Cousins and RG3 into the ground. So you got to get what you can get out, cut your losses now, and see if you can go forward with Kirk Cousins or Colt McCoy with this offense. Because clearly, in terms of the package that Jay Gruden wants to run,
right? Cousins is the drop
Robert
back.
Griffin can't do that.
No.
Cousins and Colt McCoy
and
clearly can.
McCoy does. He is a backup quarterback. Let's be honest.
He's a fine backup option.
Right. Now, in the world of Bizarro, the Redskins, another thing that happened since the last time we taped it, London Fletcher absolutely blasted Jim Haslett. What is going on there, Pete?
Clearly, London has a little bit of a beef with Jim Haslett. And, some people, it was funny, we had Fletcher on our show on the Sports Junkies on 106.7 The Fan, and our guys asked him, hey, what's the deal? What is it about Jim Haslett?
What is the underlying?
When you struggled in your last season, Jim never threw you under the bus.
That's exactly right.
And London Fletcher says, well, he's thrown plenty of people under the bus before, so maybe he did it internally in the locker room or something like that, but he never did it publicly the way Fletcher had done it, even attacking his son in social media, who was sticking up for his dad in a situation like that.
You got to figure Haslett's gone.
And London did back off of the comments. He said, maybe I could have handled that a little bit better, especially the social media part of it, but you got to feel going forward, Jay Gruden has to, even for just a change of face and voice in the locker room, he's got to let Haslett go and bring somebody else in. The question is, they're going to have a lot of money to spend in free agency. There's a big, mean, old, ornery defensive lineman coming available in Detroit. The question will be, will Ndamukong Suh become the next Albert Hainsworth and be an albatross? Or will he come in, get paid, and play hard? Likely, though, if you went and got Suh, you'd probably have to go with a 4-3 and a change of philosophy there, because you'd have to play Hatcher and Suh together as defensive tackles and play a 4-3.
Well, I think what we're talking about here, Pete, is the culture that's within the organization, within the locker room, and it goes from the top to the bottom. The Ravens seem to be able to bring in troubled players and get them turned around.
Will
Hill. And there's a long list prior to him. And it seems when the Redskins bring in troubled players, they get worse. And that speaks to the culture in the locker room.
But I think here's the thing. I think you bring up a good point by talking about the Ravens. There is obvious structure with Baltimore, with Ozzie Newsome at the top, Eric DeCosta just underneath of him, and then John Harbaugh is the head coach, because their owner, Steve Bisciotti, completely stays out of the way, allows his football people, Dick Cass and company, all to handle their situations.
Yes.
That's not the case with Washington. Not that I don't think Dan Snyder meddles as much as you think, but I think he's got his fingers in the cookie jar on some of the personnel stuff in terms of his influence and his thoughts.
Right.
I think there's a lot of people in the organization that he influences with his thoughts about who he thinks should be playing at times, and that's the difference. There is no structure with the Redskins. If you believe Bruce Allen's an NFL general manager, I've got some fine property, beautiful waterfront in the middle of a dry desert in Texas that I'd like to sell you.
Right.
So there are some that think that A.J. Smith, who's been kind of acting as a consultant for the Redskins, the former San Diego GM, could be more of a factor now in player personnel moving ahead for Washington, but that remains to be seen. But clearly, there has to be some structure struck in Washington because right now there is none. It's just chaos with the way that team is organized, and unfortunately, that's how you get to 3-13 2 years in a row, which seems to be where they are heading. That'll do it for this week's program. Another season of the Gridiron Review is in the books. We appreciate all the support throughout the year. Keep in mind, we're going to do some things with basketball this year after the first of the year. Talking Hoops will be making its way right here to these very airwaves and these same cameras. So keep your eyes peeled for that after the first of the year. Also, we'll be putting together our show where we honor some of the best footballers in Anne Arundel County, and we'll bring you that after the first of the year as well. For all of our crew here at the Anne Arundel County TV studios in Glen Burnie, for Bill Wagner, I'm Pete Medhurst. Thanks for joining us for this edition and this season of the Gridiron Review.